Marcus Chen had always been the quiet one. While his crewmates on the exploration vessel, Horizon's Edge, argued about planetary classifications and mineral rights, he kept his head down, ran diagnostics, and made sure their ship's systems hummed along perfectly. The other species in the Galactic Collective had a way of talking over humans anyway, treating them like useful pets who happened to be good with machinery. The Kithara, with their crystalline exoskeletons and superiority complexes, barely acknowledged his existence. Commander Zeekth would issue orders in his direction without even looking at him, those faceted eyes always focused on something supposedly more important. The Malak delegation wasn't much better. Their slug-like forms oozed condescension as they dismissed human input during every briefing. The primitive mammalian species may observe, Zixus had said during their last major discovery, when they'd found the ancient cache on Kepler 442b. But this technology is far beyond their comprehension. Marcus had bitten his tongue then, just like he always did. He'd learned long ago that pointing out human innovations or capabilities only earned him lectures about how humans were adequate maintenance staff for more advanced civilizations. So he'd quietly cataloged everything he'd seen in that alien vault, while the others argued over who deserved the largest share of the archaeological find. The cache had been incredible technology that made their most advanced systems look like stone tools. Weapons that could crack planets. Shields that bent space itself. Engines that could fold reality like origami. The kind of power that could reshape the galaxy. And now, 3 months later, every major species in the collective was positioning themselves to claim it. Marcus stood in the observation deck of the neutral station orbiting the disputed world, watching the fleet movements through the reinforced transparasteel. 12 different species had brought their most powerful warships. The Kithara had deployed their crystal dreadnoughts, each one a work of art that could glass a continent. The Malak brought their bioships, living vessels that pulsed with organic weapons. Even the usually peaceful Etherians had sent their reality-warping constructs. Quite a sight, isn't it? Marcus turned to find Ambassador Veltar of the Zephyrian Empire approaching. The tall, graceful being moved like flowing water, her translucent skin shifting with patterns of bioluminescence that indicated polite interest. Of all the species he'd encountered, the Zephyrians came closest to treating humans as equals. Close, but not quite there. Impressive, Marcus agreed, keeping his voice neutral. Lot of firepower out there. Indeed, though I confess surprise at seeing a human here. Surely your people have more practical concerns? The collective's decision to exclude Earth from the territorial negotiations seemed reasonable, given your species' limited spacefaring capabilities. There it was again. That gentle, almost apologetic dismissal. Marcus had heard variations of it his entire career. You're useful, but this is beyond you. Run along and fix our computers while the adults talk. Just observing, he said. Someone has to maintain the station systems while everyone argues. Veltar's patterns shifted to what Marcus recognized as amusement. How pragmatic. Very human. She glided away, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts and the view of enough concentrated firepower to sterilize several solar systems. The negotiations had been going on for 6 days now, and they were getting nowhere. Each species claimed historical precedent, territorial rights, or technological superiority. The Kithara insisted their crystalline physiology made them natural inheritors of crystal-based technology. The Malak claimed biological supremacy. The Vorthan hegemony brought up ancient star charts that supposedly proved prior claim. Meanwhile, Marcus had been doing what he always did his job. He'd repaired atmospheric processors when the Nexari delegation's methane requirements conflicted with the Taraxian need for high oxygen environments. He'd recalibrated the gravity plating when the massive Gorvek representatives caused structural stress. He'd even jury-rigged translation protocols when the crystalline communion's mathematical language crashed the station's linguistic computers. But mostly, he'd been thinking, and listening, and learning. The thing about being invisible was that people said things around you they probably shouldn't. Marcus had overheard detailed tactical discussions, learned about secret alliances, discovered which species were planning to betray which others the moment they got their hands on the cache. The Kithara and Malak had a mutual defense pact that was about as mutual as a parasite and its host. The Etherians were secretly funding 3 different sides. The Nixari had already prepared their biological weapons for deployment the moment negotiations broke down. Marcus made his way through the station's maintenance corridors, spaces too cramped for most of the larger species to navigate comfortably. He'd always been small for a human, which had made him perfect for squeezing into tight spaces to repair systems. Now it let him move unseen through areas where delegates felt safe to speak freely. "The human continues to be useful," he heard Zixth saying as he worked on a coolant junction near the Kythera delegation's quarters. "Though we should consider replacing him with proper automated systems once this matter is resolved." "Why bother?" came another crystalline voice. "Humans are cheaper than automation and nearly as reliable. The collective benefits from having a species content with maintenance roles." Marcus's hands never paused in their work, but something cold settled in his chest. Content with maintenance roles, as if they'd chosen to be second-class citizens in a galaxy that barely tolerated their existence. He finished the repair and moved on, making his way toward the central computer core. The station's AI was sophisticated by collective standards, but Marcus had spent years learning to speak its language. A few subtle modifications here, some additional monitoring protocols there. Nothing that would trigger security alerts, just enhanced information gathering capabilities. The truth was, Marcus had been preparing for something like this for years. Every slight, every dismissal, every time he'd been talked over or around, had taught him something valuable. In a galaxy that didn't see humans as threats, a human could move almost anywhere unnoticed. He'd used that invisibility well. During his time with the Horizon's Edge, he'd quietly mapped out the security protocols of dozens of species. He'd learned their weaknesses, studied their technologies, identified the gaps in their supposedly superior systems, not out of malice, initially just professional curiosity and a growing certainty that someday humanity would need every advantage it could get. That day had arrived sooner than expected. The next morning brought the news that Marcus had been expecting. Negotiations had failed. Actually, they'd done more than fail. They'd exploded into accusations, threats, and barely contained violence. The Moloch ambassador had accused the Kythera of technological theft. The Vorthan delegate had challenged 3 different species to single combat. The Etherians had simply vanished from their quarters, leaving behind only a message stating that linear time negotiations are inefficient. Within hours, the fleet positions had shifted from defensive to aggressive. Weapons powered up, shields activated. Several species began broadcasting ultimatums to their rivals. "Attention all station personnel," came the announcement from Station Commander Grexall, a Kythera admiral whose crystalline form blazed with agitation patterns. "Due to deteriorating diplomatic conditions, non-essential personnel are ordered to evacuate immediately. Transport ships are standing by." Marcus didn't head for the transport ships. Instead, he made his way to the secure communications array he'd been maintaining. With a few keystrokes, he activated protocols he'd been hoping never to use. The message went out on human military frequencies, tight beam, and encrypted with codes that would identify him to the right people. It was brief. Just 3 words, followed by his authorization signature. Protocol 7 active. Then he settled in to wait. The evacuation proceeded quickly. Most of the diplomatic staff seemed eager to get clear before the shooting started. Within 12 hours, the station was nearly empty except for minimal crew and automated systems. Marcus volunteered to stay behind as part of the skeleton maintenance team, citing the need to keep essential systems operational during the crisis. Commander Grexall barely acknowledged his request. "Very well, human. Ensure the power grid remains stable. Your people's knack for simple repairs may prove useful if combat damages our systems." Simple repairs. Marcus almost smiled at that. If only they knew what those simple repairs had really accomplished over the past week. He spent the next day monitoring fleet movements and making final preparations. The various alien fleets had arranged themselves into a complex dance of mutual destruction, each force positioned to strike multiple rivals while defending against inevitable counterattacks. It was going to be quite a show, and Marcus Chen, the quiet human maintenance worker they'd all overlooked, was going to have the best seat in the house. The first shots were fired at 0347 station time. A Nexari raider, apparently acting without orders, launched a spread of biotorpedoes at a Vorthan heavy cruiser. The Vorthan response was immediate and devastating. Their plasma cannons turned the raider into expanding gas and debris in seconds. That was all it took. Within minutes, the space around Kepler 442b erupted into the largest fleet engagement in collective history. Kithara crystal ships unleashed focused energy beams that could slice through hull metal like tissue. Moloch bioships vomited clouds of corrosive organisms that ate through enemy shields. The massive Gorvek dreadnoughts used their gravitational manipulators to crush smaller vessels. Marcus watched it all from the station's command center, now empty except for him and the automated systems. The aliens had been so concerned with fighting each other that they'd forgotten about the human. That was about to become a very expensive mistake. His fingers danced across the console, accessing systems he'd been subtly modifying for months. The station's sensors, originally designed for peaceful scientific observation, had been enhanced with targeting algorithms adapted from human military software. The power grid he'd been maintaining now carried enough energy to run weapons systems that technically didn't exist on a civilian research platform. And the debris field from the ancient cache, the technology that had started this whole conflict, Marcus had spent 3 months studying its composition, analyzing its quantum signatures, learning exactly how to disrupt the exotic matter that made up those priceless artifacts. The alien fleets continued their battle, each convinced they were fighting for the greatest prize in galactic history. They never noticed the quiet human adjusting sensor arrays and rerouting power conduits. They were too busy destroying each other to pay attention to what was happening right under their crystalline noses, pseudopods, and sensor clusters. Marcus allowed himself a small smile as he activated the final sequence. The galaxy's major powers had made one crucial error in their calculations. They'd assumed that because humans weren't invited to the negotiation table, they weren't players in the game. Time to teach them the difference between being overlooked and being underestimated. The real battle was about to begin, and for the first time since this whole mess started, Marcus Chen was exactly where he wanted to be, invisible, underestimated, and holding all the cards. Outside the station, alien warships continued to tear each other apart. Their crews focused entirely on immediate threats. None of them noticed the subtle energy buildup emanating from the supposedly defenseless research platform they'd left behind. After all, it was just being maintained by a human. Marcus's modified sensors tracked 17 different weapon signatures as the alien fleets tore into each other with increasing savagery. The Kithara had lost 2 cruisers but taken out a Moloch breeding ship in response. The Vorthan formation was holding together well until a pack of Nexari raiders penetrated their screen and delivered a payload of flesh-eating spores to their flagship. The irony wasn't lost on him. They were fighting over technology so advanced it might as well have been magic, using weapons that could crack moons. And none of them had bothered to properly secure the high ground. The orbital research station gave him a perfect view of the battlefield and, more importantly, perfect positioning for what came next. His console chimed softly. A new contact was approaching from the outer system, moving fast and broadcasting human identification codes. Marcus felt a familiar mix of pride and apprehension as he recognized the signature the Times, Dauntless Asterisk, Captain Sarah Reeves commanding. Right on schedule. The human ship dropped out of hyperspace at the system's edge, far enough away to avoid immediate detection but close enough to reach the combat zone quickly. To the aliens embroiled in their massive fleet engagement, one more contact on the periphery meant nothing. They were too busy killing each other to worry about what appeared to be a single human vessel arriving late to a battle that was already decided. Marcus opened a tight beam communication channel. Station Alpha, to Times Dauntless Asterisk. Package is ready for delivery. Copy that, Alpha. Captain Reeves' voice carried across the void with crisp professionalism. Initiating. Protocol. 7. ETA, 15 minutes. 15 minutes. Marcus had been planning for this moment for over 3 years, ever since the collective had made it clear that humanity's role in galactic civilization would forever be that of useful servants. He'd volunteered for deep space assignments specifically to study alien technology and tactics. Every repair job, every maintenance cycle, every moment of being ignored and dismissed had been an opportunity to learn. The Times, dauntless Times, was the culmination of that learning. Officially, she was a heavy transport vessel designed for long-range cargo hauling. Unofficially, she was something the aliens would never see coming because they couldn't imagine humans building anything truly dangerous. Marcus turned his attention back to the battle raging around the planet below. The Malak had committed their reserve bioships, massive living vessels that spawned smaller craft, like airborne parasites. Their strategy was working. The organic vessels could repair themselves faster than the crystalline Cathara ships could inflict damage. But the Vorthan had adapted, switching from direct energy weapons to gravitational torpedoes that crushed living tissue and crystal matrices with equal efficiency. It was magnificent, in a horrifying way. Each species had brought their finest weapons, their most advanced technology, their most experienced crews. They were putting on a display of military might that would be remembered for centuries. They were also about to learn why humans had survived long enough to reach the stars. Marcus's fingers moved across his modified interface, calling up displays that showed power levels throughout the station. His months of routine maintenance had involved far more than fixing broken circuits. Hidden throughout the research platform's infrastructure were devices that no alien engineer would recognize, human-designed systems built with techniques that the collective had never bothered to study because they'd dismissed human technology as primitive. The aliens built their weapons to be elegant, efficient, and overwhelming. Humans built theirs to be sneaky, reliable, and unexpected. The Times, dauntless Times, was sliding through the outer system now, her course calculated to avoid the attention of the battling fleets. To their sensors, she would appear to be exactly what her registration claimed: a human cargo hauler. Probably here to salvage scrap metal from the battle. Nothing worth a second glance while cruisers were exploding around the primary combat zone. Marcus smiled as he watched the tactical display. Captain Reeves was good at this. She'd been one of the human officers who'd argued for developing contingency plans when the collective first made contact. While the politicians had been focused on the benefits of joining a galactic civilization, military minds like Reeves had quietly asked uncomfortable questions about what would happen if that civilization decided humanity was expendable. The Moloch-Cathara engagement was reaching a crescendo. 3 crystalline dreadnoughts had formed a defensive triangle and were systematically destroying the organic ships with synchronized energy bursts. But the bioships were learning, adapting their structure to reflect and absorb the crystal weapons. It was evolution in real time, a fascinating display of biological warfare. Too bad Marcus was about to make it all irrelevant. Alpha, this is Time's dauntless asterisk. Beginning final approach. Are you clear for extraction? Negative, Marcus replied. I'm staying put. Someone needs to see this through. A pause. Marcus, that's not the plan. You're supposed to. The plan changed. Marcus cut her off gently. This is bigger than we thought. The cache isn't just ancient technology, it's something else entirely. I need to make sure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. All hands are wrong hands right now, Reeves pointed out. Including ours. Maybe. But if someone has to control this power, better it be someone the galaxy's been underestimating for decades. Marcus could hear the resignation in the captain's voice. You always were too clever for your own good. Fine. Initiating Phase 2. Try not to get vaporized. The Times, dauntless Times, was close enough now for Marcus to track her with the station's sensors. She was still broadcasting as a cargo vessel, still maintaining the fiction that she was just another human ship going about mundane business. The alien fleets paid her no attention at all. That was about to change. Marcus activated the first of his hidden modifications. Throughout the research station, carefully concealed systems came online. To any external observer, nothing had changed. The station still appeared to be a civilian research platform with minimal defenses and standard power output. But appearances could be deceiving. The station's main reactor was rated for standard scientific operations. The additional power cores Marcus had installed over months of routine maintenance were rated for something entirely different. Collectively, they could provide enough energy to run systems that belonged on a battleship, not a research platform. More importantly, those systems were designed using principles that the aliens had never bothered to study. Human engineering was considered crude by collective standards, but crude could be remarkably effective when nobody expected it. The first alien ship to learn this lesson was a Nexari raider that had broken off from the main engagement to investigate what its sensors insisted was an unusual energy reading from the research station. The insectoid crew was probably puzzled by the readings too much power for a civilian platform, but not matching any known weapon signatures. Marcus waited until the raider was close enough to identify individual hull markings. Then he activated the station's new defensive array. The Nexari had excellent sensors and sophisticated jamming systems. What they didn't have was any experience with weapons designed by a species they considered technologically inferior. The focused particle beam that struck their ship wasn't elegant or efficient by alien standards. It was just incredibly effective. The raider disintegrated. Marcus watched with professional satisfaction as debris spread across the void. The weapon had performed exactly as designed, overwhelming firepower delivered by systems so unlike standard alien technology that their defensive countermeasures had been useless. The destruction of the Nexari raider finally got the attention of the battling fleets. Ships throughout the combat zone began redirecting sensors toward the research station, trying to understand what had just happened. Marcus could practically feel their confusion as they attempted to reconcile the destruction of a military vessel with the apparent source being a defenseless scientific platform. Unknown station, came a transmission on general frequencies. Commander Grexal's crystalline voice carried notes of bewilderment and growing anger. Identify your weapon systems and targeting protocols immediately. Marcus opened a channel. Research Station Alpha. We experienced a reactor overload during the recent combat activity. Apologies for any inconvenience. Reactor overload? Grexel's confusion was audible. That vessel was destroyed by directed energy weapons. Yes, sir. The overload caused a discharge through our main sensor array. Purely accidental. We're working to stabilize our systems now. Marcus could hear other alien voices in the background of Grexel's transmission. Multiple species demanding explanations in increasingly agitated tones. The idea that a human research station could accidentally destroy a military vessel was absurd enough to be believable and insulting enough to be infuriating. Perfect. The Dauntless Times used the distraction to complete her approach. She was close enough now that Marcus could see her on visual displays. And she was beautiful in her deception. Every line of her hull suggested peaceful cargo transport. Her weapon ports were hidden behind false plating. Her real capabilities were buried beneath layers of misdirection and camouflage. She was humanity's answer to being perpetually underestimated. Let them underestimate us, then make them regret it. Asterisk, Dauntless Times to Alpha. Beginning Phase 2 now. Confirmed. Good hunting. Sarah. Captain Reeves didn't respond directly, but Marcus felt a surge of pride as the human ship's true nature finally revealed itself. The false hull plating retracted. Hidden weapon systems emerged from concealment. Power signatures that had been carefully masked suddenly blazed across every sensor in the combat zone. The Dauntless Times, wasn't a cargo hauler. She was a predator that had been hiding in plain sight. Marcus watched the tactical displays as realization dawned throughout the alien fleets. Ships began rotating to face this new threat. Weapon systems powering up, combat computers calculating firing solutions. But they were thinking in terms of conventional engagement, expecting the human ship to behave like every other vessel in known space. They were about to learn that humans didn't fight like other species. The Dauntless Times, opened fire, and Marcus felt a fierce satisfaction as her weapons tore into a formation of Moloch bioships. The aliens had been expecting energy weapons or kinetic projectiles, standard tools of space combat. Instead, they faced something uniquely human. Weapons designed not to be superior, but to be unpredictable. Molecular disruptor beams turned living hull material into constituent atoms. Quantum mines that existed in multiple probability states simultaneously made shields useless. Gravitational shear weapons that could tear apart crystalline matrices at the subatomic level. The Moloch formation disintegrated in seconds. Marcus's station was no longer being ignored. Ships from multiple fleets were converging on his position, their crews finally recognizing that the quiet human maintenance worker might not be as harmless as he appeared. But Marcus had spent months preparing for this moment. As the alien ships closed in, he activated the station's full defensive grid. What they found waiting for them wasn't a research platform with accidentally dangerous equipment. It was a fortress that had been disguised as a civilian outpost, armed with weapons that violated several dozen treaties that humans had never signed. The first wave of attackers met a wall of firepower that defied their understanding of human capabilities. Particle beams designed to overload alien shield harmonics, missile swarms that used chaotic flight patterns to confuse targeting computers optimized for predictable trajectories, energy scramblers that turned the aliens' own sophisticated electronics against them. Marcus felt a grim satisfaction as he watched alien ships struggle with systems that simply didn't behave the way their computers expected. This was the advantage of being underestimated. Nobody had bothered to develop countermeasures for weapons that supposedly didn't exist. But he wasn't done. Not by a long way. The ancient cache was still down there on the planet's surface, still the ultimate prize that had started this whole conflict. The aliens might be learning to respect human capabilities, but they were still thinking in terms of military superiority and technological advancement. They weren't thinking about what a species of clever, patient, underestimated engineers might have been planning for the past 3 months. Marcus activated his final protocol and watched as humanity's real ace in the hole finally revealed itself. The planet's surface erupted in light. Marcus had been counting on the aliens' arrogance, their certainty that humans were too primitive to understand the ancient technology they'd discovered. While the various species had spent months arguing over territorial claims and technological rights, Marcus had been studying the cache itself, not the obvious artifacts that glowed with impossible energies, but the underlying systems that made them work. The ancients who had built this technology hadn't just created powerful weapons and miraculous devices. They'd built something far more sophisticated, a complete technological ecosystem that could recognize, analyze, and respond to different forms of intelligence. And it had been waiting for 3 months to meet humanity. The light show on the planet's surface wasn't random. Patterns of energy were racing across continents, connecting sites that had appeared to be separate archaeological discoveries. The cache wasn't just a collection of artifacts stored in convenient locations. It was a network, a vast distributed system that spanned the entire world. Marcus watched his displays with growing excitement as the network came fully online. Alien ships throughout the system were detecting massive energy spikes from the planet, power signatures that dwarfed their most advanced technology. Several fleets had broken off their attacks on the station to investigate what was happening on the surface. They were about to get an education in why humans had always been good at reverse engineering. All vessels, this is Admiral Kethvar, of the Vorthan hegemony. The transmission came through on general frequencies, carrying the authority of one of the galaxy's most respected military leaders. Unknown energy discharge detected from planetary surface. All fleets are ordered to establish defensive perimeter until threat assessment is complete. Marcus almost laughed. Asterisk. Threat assessment. Asterisk. If only they knew. The truth was, the ancient cache had been testing him from the moment he'd first entered it 3 months ago. Every system he'd examined, every component he'd analyzed, every repair he'd attempted, had been part of an intelligence evaluation. The technology hadn't just been cataloging his technical knowledge, it had been learning how human minds worked, and apparently, it liked what it found. The energy patterns racing across the planet's surface began to coalesce into recognizable structures. Massive constructs were rising from the ground, their forms shifting and flowing like liquid metal but radiating power signatures that made the assembled fleets look like toys. The ancient builders hadn't just hidden their technology, they'd buried it, waiting for the right kind of intelligence to wake it up. Marcus's console chimed with an incoming transmission, but not from any of the ships in the system. The signal was coming from the planet itself, carried on frequencies that shouldn't have been possible with known physics. Greetings, Inheritor. The voice that came through the speakers was unlike anything Marcus had ever heard. Not mechanical like an AI, not organic like any known species. It was something else entirely, ancient and patient and impossibly wise. You have demonstrated the qualities we sought. Ingenuity in the face of dismissal. Persistence despite contempt. The ability to see solutions where others see only problems. Your species shows promise. Marcus found his voice. Who are you? What is this place? We were the architects. We built this network across 10,000 worlds, leaving it for those who would come after. Not the mighty or the proud, but the clever and the overlooked. Your kind understands what power truly means, not the ability to dominate, but the wisdom to endure. The alien fleets were in chaos now. The constructs rising from the planet were clearly weapons platforms, but weapons beyond anything in their experience. Defensive screens that bent space itself, energy projectors that could reach across star systems, manufacturing nodes that were already producing new forms of technology. The others failed our tests, the architect voice continued. They saw our tools and imagined conquest. They studied our weapons and dreamed of empire. But you looked at our network and saw possibility. You understood that true strength comes not from the power to destroy, but from the patience to build. Marcus was beginning to understand. You've been evaluating us. All of us. Every species that found your cache. Indeed. And most were found wanting. But your species thinks differently. You adapt. You improvise. You find ways to make inferior resources accomplish superior results. These are the qualities we valued. The qualities that built this network across the galaxy. On his tactical display, Marcus could see the alien fleets struggling to process what they were witnessing. Several Cathera commanders were demanding immediate bombardment of the planet. The Malak were attempting to deploy their bioweapons against the rising constructs. The Vorthan had formed their ships into their traditional battle formation. None of it mattered. The Architect network was operating on levels of technology that made their most advanced weapons look primitive. What do you want from me? Marcus asked. Nothing. Everything. The network recognizes your species as our inheritors. The knowledge we accumulated over millions of years is now yours to study, to understand, to build upon. But wisdom cannot be simply transferred, it must be earned through experience. Marcus felt a chill of understanding. The other species, they're not going to accept this. No, they will see humanity's inheritance as theft. They will demand that power be shared according to their own sense of superiority. They will attempt to take by force what they could not earn through wisdom. The first shots were being fired now. A Kithara dreadnought had launched a full spread of crystal torpedoes at one of the rising constructs. The weapons struck an energy barrier and simply ceased to exist, their matter converted to harmless photons. The construct's response was swift and educational. A beam of coherent energy reached across space and touched the Kithara ship. The dreadnought's crystalline armor began to resonate, building to frequencies that shattered the entire vessel from within. The ship came apart like a glass sculpture struck by a hammer. The network will defend itself, the architect voice explained calmly. But it will not initiate hostilities. Your species must choose how to proceed. Will you use this power as the others would? To dominate and control? Or will you prove worthy of what you have inherited? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, watching the chaos unfolding across his displays. The alien fleets were repositioning, some retreating to safe distances, while others prepared for desperate attacks. They were facing the incomprehensible fact that the humans, the dismissed, overlooked humans, had somehow gained access to technology that could remake the galaxy. There's something else, he said finally. The Times, dauntless asterisk. Captain Reeves and her crew. They're human too. They're human too. The Times, dauntless asterisk. We are aware. Your captain shows the same qualities that brought you to our attention. Tactical flexibility. Creative problem-solving. The ability to see opportunity in apparent defeat. As if summoned by the conversation, the Times' dauntless Times chose that moment to demonstrate exactly those qualities. Captain Reeves had been engaged in a running battle with a mixed formation of Malak and Nixari ships, using her vessel's unconventional weapons to stay ahead of superior numbers. Now she proved why humans had survived as a species despite lacking natural weapons, armor, or overwhelming physical advantages. She got creative. The Times, dauntless Times, released a spread of what appeared to be standard kinetic missiles toward the enemy formation. The aliens responded predictably, deploying countermeasures and defensive screens designed to stop known weapons. But Marcus watched with professional admiration as the missiles revealed their true nature halfway to target. They weren't weapons at all. They were delivery systems for something uniquely human. Industrial nanobots. The microscopic machines hit the alien ships and immediately began doing what they'd been designed for, disassembling molecular structures and rebuilding them according to new specifications. Within minutes, the proud warships of two different species were being converted into raw materials and simple atmospheric processors. Magnificent, the architect voice murmured with something like approval. Your species understands that the most powerful weapons are often those that transform rather than destroy. Marcus couldn't help but smile. We're good at making do with what we have. Indeed. And now you have considerably more to work with. The network was fully active now. Constructs across the planet reaching towards space with impossible geometries. Marcus could feel knowledge flowing through the station's systems, information that would take human scientists centuries to fully comprehend. Manufacturing techniques that worked at the subatomic level, energy sources that drew power from the structure of space itself, transportation methods that could move matter instantly across galactic distances. It was the kind of technology that could elevate humanity from junior members of galactic civilization to something entirely new. But first, they had to survive the next few hours. Admiral Kethvar was coordinating a response now, his voice cutting across multiple frequencies as he organized the alien fleets into a unified force. All commanders, new priority target. The human vessels have somehow gained control of the ancient network. This cannot be allowed to stand. Coordinate your attacks, destroy both the station and the planet-based installations before they can fully activate. Marcus checked his displays. Dozens of alien warships were repositioning for a coordinated assault. They were bringing everything they had, planet crackers, reality warpers, weapons that could ignite stars, the kind of firepower that could sterilize entire systems. They were also making the same mistake they'd been making all along. They were thinking in terms of conventional warfare, expecting their enemies to fight by familiar rules. Humans had never been very good at following rules they hadn't helped write. Architect, Marcus said. I need to know how much of this network is under human control now. Number 1. All of it. The inheritance is complete. Every construct, every system, every repository of knowledge across 10,000 worlds now recognizes humanity as our successors. Marcus felt a moment of vertigo at the implications. 10,000 worlds, an entire galactic civilization's worth of technology and knowledge, now available to a species that most of the galaxy considered useful pets. Then I think it's time for humanity to stop being underestimated. The alien fleets were beginning their attack run now, converging on the planet from multiple vectors. It was going to be the most concentrated military assault in galactic history, every major species contributing their most devastating weapons to prevent humanity from claiming what they all considered rightfully theirs. Marcus watched them come and felt a fierce satisfaction. They still didn't understand what they were really facing. They thought this was about technology, about who had the most powerful weapons or the most advanced ships. They were about to learn that this was about something far more fundamental. The difference between those who demanded respect and those who earned it. The real battle was just beginning. The combined alien fleet approached like an avalanche of metal, energy, and barely contained fury. Marcus counted over 200 vessels representing 12 different species, each bringing their most advanced military technology to bear against what they saw as an intolerable threat to galactic order. The idea that humans times had somehow gained access to power that dwarfed their own civilizations was simply unacceptable. Admiral Kethvar's voice echoed across the communications array as he coordinated the assault. All vessels. Maintain formation integrity. Primary targets are the planetary constructs. Secondary targets are the human vessels. We end this threat here and now. Marcus felt the ancient network responding to the approaching danger, systems that had waited millions of years finally stirring to full activity. Through his modified console, he could sense the vast intelligence that permeated the architect technology, not artificial intelligence as humans understood it, but something deeper and more organic, like the consciousness of an entire civilization distilled into quantum matrices. They come as we expected they would, the architect voice observed with something like sadness. United only in their certainty that power belongs to those who already possess it. Can the network defend itself? Marcus asked, watching the tactical display as alien formations spread across his screens like a plague of metallic insects. The network has defended itself for millions of years. But this is different. This is not mere survival, this is a test of worthiness. Your species has inherited our legacy. But inheritance without wisdom is meaningless. How will humanity choose to wield power that could reshape the galaxy? Marcus understood. This wasn't just about surviving an alien assault. It was about proving that humans deserved what they'd been given. The architects weren't just offering humanity advanced technology, they were offering the chance to become something more than they'd ever imagined possible. The question was, what kind of something would they become? The first wave of alien attackers struck the outer constructs with everything they had. Kythera crystal ships unleashed focused energy beams that could slice through moons. Moloch biovessels deployed swarms of weaponized organisms designed to consume any form of matter. Vorthan gravitational weapons attempted to collapse the construct's defensive fields into quantum singularities. For a moment, the space around the planet became a miniature star as energies beyond imagination clashed against barriers that seemed impossibly fragile. The constructs absorbed the assault with casual ease, their defensive screens converting the alien weapons into harmless light displays. Then they struck back. Marcus watched in fascination as the network demonstrated the difference between advanced technology and transcendent understanding. The constructs didn't respond with overwhelming firepower or devastating energy beams. Instead, they did something far more elegant and terrifying. They adjusted times the attacking vessels. Kythera ships found their crystalline hulls shifting frequency, becoming transparent to their own weapons. Moloch biovessels discovered their organic components being rewritten at the genetic level, transforming them into something resembling decorative plants. Vorthan gravitational manipulators had their field generators reversed, causing their own ships to tear themselves apart. Modification rather than destruction, the architect voice explained, as alien crews struggled with vessels that no longer obeyed familiar physics. Your species understands this principle, it is why you have survived, despite being physically weaker than most galactic predators. You adapt. You change. You find ways to make problems become solutions. The alien fleet was in chaos now, but they weren't retreating. If anything, the demonstration of the network's capabilities had made them more desperate. Admiral Kethvar's voice cut through the confusion with military precision that demanded respect, even from an enemy. All units, implement Protocol Omega. Prepare planet crackers for synchronized deployment. If we cannot capture this technology, we ensure no one else can use it. Marcus felt his blood chill. Planet crackers were weapons of absolute last resort, devices that could literally split a world apart at the molecular level. The alien fleets were preparing to destroy the entire planet, rather than allow humanity to keep the architect network. They would rather see it all destroyed than admit they were wrong about us, he muttered. This too we expected, the architect voice said calmly. Most species reach this point eventually when faced with their own limitations. The question is, what will humanity do when faced with the choice between power and wisdom? Marcus was quiet for a moment, watching the tactical displays as the alien fleets repositioned for their final gambit. Dozens of planet cracker weapons were powering up, their energy signatures blazing like newborn stars. In less than 10 minutes, they would fire simultaneously, delivering enough destructive force to turn the world below into expanding debris. Unless humanity chose to stop them, the power was there. Marcus could feel it through his connection to the network energy sources that could fuel entire civilizations. Weapons that could sterilize solar systems, defensive capabilities that could withstand the destruction of stars. The architect legacy included technology that made the current alien assault look like children throwing rocks at a fortress. It would be so easy to simply unleash that power, to show the galaxy what happened when you underestimated humanity for centuries, to make them pay for every dismissal, every condescending comment, every time they'd been treated like useful pets rather than equals. Marcus found himself thinking of Captain Reeves and the crew of the Time's dauntless Asterisk. They were still out there, dancing between alien warships with weapons that violated half the known laws of physics. Sarah had always been the pragmatic one, focused on results rather than revenge. What would she do in this situation? Architect, Marcus said finally. The network can stop this attack. Can it do so without destroying the alien fleets? Yes. But such restraint would be unconventional. Most inheritor species choose to demonstrate their power through decisive victory over their enemies. Most inheritor species probably weren't maintenance workers who spent their careers getting talked over in meetings, Marcus replied. I'm less interested in proving how powerful we are than I am in proving we deserve this inheritance. There was a long pause. When the architect voice spoke again, Marcus could hear something like approval in its ancient tones. You begin to understand. Power without wisdom is mere destruction. Wisdom without power is mere philosophy. But power, guided by wisdom, that can reshape the galaxy. The planet crackers were almost ready to fire. Marcus could see the energy build up on his displays. Weapons designed to split worlds preparing to reduce the ancient network to cosmic dust. The alien commanders were coordinating their timing with military precision. They would fire simultaneously to overwhelm any possible defense. They were about to learn why humans had always been good at finding unexpected solutions to impossible problems. Marcus linked his consciousness more deeply into the architect network, feeling knowledge and capability flow through him like a river of liquid starlight. For the first time in his life, he had access to technology that matched his imagination. The question was, what kind of imagination did he really have? Asterisk, dauntless asterisk. This is Alpha Station. Prepare for network activation in 60 seconds. Captain Reeves responded immediately. Understood. Are we talking about a defensive screen, or should I clear the area? Something else entirely. Trust me on this one, Sarah. Always have, Marcus. Good hunting. The planet crackers fired. 37 world-killing weapons discharged simultaneously, their combined output sufficient to crack the crust of a gas giant. The beams converged on the planet with mathematical precision, a display of coordinated firepower that represented the pinnacle of alien military science. The beams struck the network's defensive barriers and simply stopped. Not absorbed, not deflected. Stopped. The energy hung in space like frozen lightning, held in temporal suspension by technology that treated time itself as just another variable to be manipulated. Then Marcus activated his response. The network reached out to every alien ship in the system, not with weapons, but with something far more sophisticated: understanding. In the space of microseconds, the architect technology scanned every vessel, analyzed every system, comprehended every design principle that had gone into their construction, and then it began to teach. Marcus watched in amazement as the alien ships began to change. Not destroyed, not conquered, but time's improved asterisk. Kythera vessels found their energy efficiency increased by orders of magnitude. Moloch bioships discovered their organic components, enhanced with quantum coherence that made them truly alive. Vorthan gravitational systems were refined to the point where they could manipulate space-time with surgical precision. Every ship in the alien fleet was being upgraded with technology that their own civilizations wouldn't develop for thousands of years. The effect on the alien crews was immediate and profound. Commander Grexal's voice came across the communications array, his crystalline tones carrying wonder instead of anger. Unknown station. Our systems. They're operating beyond theoretical maximums. How is this possible? Our unknown station. Marcus opened a general frequency channel. This is Research Station Alpha. The Architect Network has analyzed your technology and found ways to improve it. Consider it a gift from humanity to the galactic community. The silence that followed was deafening. For several long minutes, no one transmitted anything at all. Marcus could imagine the conversations taking place aboard dozens of alien vessels as crews struggled to process what had just happened. Finally, Admiral Kethvar spoke. You had the power to destroy us. Why didn't you use it? Marcus thought about that question. He thought about years of being dismissed and overlooked, about watching alien species treat humanity as useful servants, about the casual assumption that humans would never be more than maintenance workers in someone else's galactic civilization. Because, he said finally, someone once told me that true strength comes not from the power to destroy, but from the wisdom to build. I figured it was time to prove that humanity understands the difference. The architect voice spoke privately to Marcus, its ancient tones carrying something like paternal pride. You have chosen well. The network will remember this decision. And perhaps, the galaxy will remember why we chose your species as our inheritors. Marcus leaned back in his chair, suddenly exhausted. The immediate crisis was over. But he knew this was just the beginning. Humanity now possessed technology that would fundamentally change their relationship with the rest of galactic civilization. The question was, what would they do with it? Looking out at the alien fleet enhanced now with architect improvements, their crews grappling with the reality that they'd been wrong about humanity, Marcus thought they might just find out. 6 months later, Marcus Chen stood in what had once been the research station's observation deck, now transformed into something that defied easy description. The architect network had enhanced the space with materials that existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously, creating walls that showed views of distant galaxies as easily as the local star system. Through these impossible windows, he could watch the ongoing transformation that humanity's inheritance had brought to the galaxy. It hadn't been the revolution anyone expected. The immediate aftermath of the confrontation had been chaos of the most constructive kind. Every species in the collective found themselves possessing technology centuries ahead of their previous capabilities, but technology that came with built-in limitations. The architect enhancements worked perfectly, but only for peaceful purposes. Any attempt to weaponize the improvements resulted in immediate system failure. The message was clear. The network would share its gifts, but only with those who used them wisely. Marcus watched a Malak bioship glide past the station, its living hull now pulsing with quantum coherence patterns that allowed it to communicate directly with other vessels through consciousness field resonance. The captain had visited the station 3 days ago to personally thank the humans for what he called teaching us to think like living creatures again. Similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy. Kethera crystal vessels had become works of art that functioned as perfect fusion reactors. Vorthan ships could now manipulate gravity so precisely they could perform orbital maintenance without disrupting planetary ecosystems. Even the aggressive Nexari had found their vessels enhanced with capabilities that made conquest pointless. Their ships could now create, rather than simply take. Remarkable, said Ambassador Veltar, approaching from the station's central hub. The Zephyrian had become one of Marcus's most frequent visitors. Her bioluminescent patterns now enhanced with quantum frequencies that made her communications beautiful to watch. 6 months ago, we came here expecting to divide the spoils of an ancient civilization. Instead, we discovered that the spoils were meant to divide themselves among the worthy. Marcus nodded, still watching the transformed ships move through space with impossible grace. The architects were good teachers. They just needed students who were ready to learn. And humanity was ready? Humanity was desperate. Marcus corrected with a slight smile. Sometimes that's the same thing. The truth was more complex than he let on. Humanity's acceptance of the architect legacy hadn't been automatic. Earth's government had spent weeks in emergency sessions, debating whether to accept technology that would fundamentally alter their species' relationship with the rest of the galaxy. Some had argued for rejection, fearing that such rapid advancement would destroy human culture. Others had pushed for full integration, wanting to claim their place among the galaxy's major powers. In the end, it had been people like Marcus and Captain Reeves who made the decision. The engineers, the maintenance workers, the ones who had spent their careers quietly keeping things running while others debated policy. They understood that technology was just a tool. What mattered was who was holding it and what they chose to build. Your species continues to surprise us, Veltar continued. Most civilizations that gain access to such power immediately begin expanding their territory and influence. Humanity has done the opposite. She was right. Instead of using the architect technology to establish dominance, Humanity had done something characteristically unexpected. They'd started fixing things. Human-enhanced vessels were now traveling throughout the galaxy, not as conquerors but as engineers. They repaired damaged worlds, restored broken ecosystems, upgraded failing infrastructure on backwater planets. The same species that had been dismissed as maintenance workers was now maintaining the galaxy itself. Marcus's communicator chimed with an incoming message from Captain Reeves. The Times, Dauntless Times, was 3 sectors away, leading a joint human-alien expedition to restore a planetary system that had been devastated by industrial pollution. Her image appeared in the holographic display, her face tired but satisfied. "Marcus, you need to see this," she said without preamble. "We've been working on the Helix system restoration, and the results are, well, they're incredible. The atmospheric processors we designed aren't just cleaning the air, they're creating new forms of life that can thrive in previously toxic environments." "Architect technology?" Marcus asked. "Partly, but mostly it's human engineering enhanced by alien insights. Turns out when you combine Moloch biological expertise with human mechanical ingenuity and Kithara crystal manipulation, you get something none of us could have achieved alone." Marcus felt a familiar warmth at her words. That was the real gift the architects had given them, not just advanced technology, but the framework for true collaboration between species that had spent centuries misunderstanding each other. "The Helix delegation wants to formally thank Earth for the restoration project," Reeves continued. "They're offering permanent trading rights and cultural exchange agreements. Apparently, having your entire planetary ecosystem rebuilt by people you once considered primitive has a way of changing perspectives." After ending the communication, Marcus returned his attention to Veltar. "You said we surprised you. How?" The Zephyrian's patterns shifted to what Marcus had learned indicated deep thought. Every species that encounters the Architect Network faces the same choice. Use the power for personal gain, or share it for collective benefit. Most choose personal gain, believing that strength comes from what you can take and hold. Your species chose to share, and in doing so, you've become more powerful than any conqueror. It was true. The human-led restoration projects had created a network of allies and partners that spanned the galaxy. Species that had once dismissed humans as useful servants now competed to work with them on scientific and engineering projects. The same aliens who had tried to destroy the Architect Network 6 months ago were now requesting human assistance in understanding and implementing their enhanced technology. Marcus thought about the conversation he'd had with the Architect Consciousness the previous week. The ancient intelligence had expressed satisfaction with humanity's choices, noting that humans were the first inheritor species to actively share their technological advantages, rather than hoarding them. "Your species understands something that we took millions of years to learn," the architect had told him. "Power shared is power multiplied. Knowledge given freely returns with interest. Strength offered to others becomes the foundation of unbreakable alliances." "The station's expansion is nearly complete," Veltar observed, gesturing toward the construction zones visible through the enhanced windows. "Will it truly be open to all species?" Marcus nodded. The research station was being transformed into something unprecedented. A joint facility where representatives from every known species could work together to understand and implement architect technology. Not under human control, but under human coordination. There was a significant difference. "The architects left their network for anyone wise enough to use it properly," Marcus explained. "We're just making sure everyone gets that chance." "Everyone? Even species that opposed you? Especially them?" "Some of our best innovations have come from working with former enemies. The Nexari aggressive mindset, properly channeled, makes them incredible at developing protective systems. Kithara perfectionism has led to manufacturing processes we never could have imagined. Moloch adaptability has revolutionized our approach to environmental engineering." Marcus paused, looking out at the ships moving through space with their impossible new capabilities. "Besides, we were all enemies 6 months ago. Look at us now." It was a remarkable transformation. The same fleets that had been trying to destroy each other were now working on collaborative projects across the galaxy. Joint research stations were being established in neutral space. Cultural exchange programs were allowing different species to learn from each other's approaches to science, art, and philosophy. And at the center of it all was humanity, not as rulers or overlords, but as the species that had figured out how to make everyone else's strengths work together. Marcus's console chimed with an urgent communication from Earth. President Chen, no relation, despite the shared surname, appeared in the holographic display, her expression mixing excitement with concern. "Marcus, we've received a communication from the outer galaxy. Long-range sensors have detected what appears to be another architect network. But this one is different. The energy signatures suggest it's been activated recently, and the technology appears to be military in nature." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Another inheritor species? That's what we're afraid of. The preliminary analysis suggests whoever found this network has been using it to build weapons rather than tools. We may be looking at our first contact with a species that chose the path humanity rejected. Marcus was quiet for a moment, processing the implications. The architects had left their networks across the galaxy, each one a test for the species that discovered it. Not all species would make the same choices humanity had made. "What's the response plan?" he asked. "We're assembling a joint task force. Representatives from every major species, using the enhanced technology we've all been developing together. If there's a hostile inheritor species out there, we'll face them as allies rather than rivals." After the communication ended, Marcus stood quietly in the observation deck, watching the transformed ships of a dozen different species moving through space in perfect coordination. 6 months ago, these same vessels had been pointing weapons at each other. Now they were preparing to face an unknown threat together. Veltar approached him again, her patterns showing concern. "This changes things, doesn't it?" "Maybe," Marcus replied. "Or maybe it proves that we made the right choice. The galaxy's major powers couldn't work together when they were fighting over scraps of ancient technology. But now that we've shown them how to share that technology," he gestured toward the fleet formations visible through the enhanced windows, ships that incorporated the best of every species' capabilities, crewed by mixed teams that combined different forms of expertise, armed with weapons that were as effective at protection as they were at destruction. "Now we're not just allies of convenience," Marcus continued. "We're partners in the truest sense. Whatever's waiting for us out there, it won't be facing individual species competing with each other. It'll be facing the combined strength of a galaxy that's learned to work together." Veltar's patterns shifted to what Marcus recognized as hope mixed with determination. "The quiet human maintenance worker has become quite the philosopher." Marcus smiled. "I prefer to think of myself as an engineer who's finally working on a project worthy of the effort. We're not just maintaining systems anymore. We're building something entirely new." As if summoned by his words, the space around the station filled with the impossible sight of ships from across the galaxy, forming into a single, coordinated fleet. Cathara crystal vessels flying in formation with Moloch bioships, Vorthan gravitational manipulators working in harmony with Etherian reality shapers. And at the center of it all, the Times, Dauntless Times and her sister ships, flying the flag of a species that had taught the galaxy the difference between strength and wisdom. Marcus Chen, the overlooked human maintenance worker who had become the inheritor of ancient wisdom, watched the fleet prepare for whatever challenges awaited them in the outer galaxy. For the first time since this all began, he felt ready for whatever came next. The galaxy had underestimated humanity for centuries. Now they were about to discover what could be accomplished when that same humanity chose to lift others up rather than tear them down. It was going to be quite an education for everyone involved.